Hey, welcome to Mama Mandala. Happy new moon. It's a new moon in Cancer, the archetype of the mother, the presence of the crab in the shell. So it's the soft tissue of our being, the tenderness of who we are, that is also wearing a protective layer, that is also building a home around the vulnerability so that we can be safe in our softness, so that we can be strong and functional while we're also maintaining deep connection to the gentle, delicate aspects of our being. So, this new moon, which is the time of year when summer is hitting and rolling and moving, this time of year that's associated in the northern hemisphere with the abundance of nature, with food growing, with fruit maturing and ripening, with harvest season right on the coming right up. And it's this invitation into our ability to be nourished and to nourish others. So in this mother archetype, this playful invitation into our own caretaking capacities and our abilities, we're invited to both turn that motherly energy toward ourselves and reparent ourselves and care for ourselves and nurture ourselves and take good care of who we are and of what we're cultivating inside of us, the things in our lives that we are building, that we are growing, the gardens in our lives where things are coming into fruition in, and to turn that into a process of also bringing forth this generosity from inside and offering it to the people in our lives, to others, to the collective, to society, right? So it's this time of year that's associated with prosperity and abundance in the northern hemisphere, when the sun is strong and food is available. In the southern hemisphere, though, this is an inward turning time. This is the time of beginning of winter. This is the time. Cancer is the archetype, if you look at it from the southern hemisphere perspective, of the mother as the womb, as the home, as the womb, as this energy of taking everything inwardly and protecting everything inside. So we have a play between a generous, externally turning, outward moving, in a way, an extroverted kind of presence, even though cancer obviously. And here's the thing, let me just kind of go into that for a second. I'm not looking at this from an astrological perspective so much because I'm not an astrologer. And I also, to be fully honest with you, I don't have a faith-based relationship with astrology. I have more of a playful relationship with the archetypes because I am more of a mythologist, a somatic mythologist, if you will. I love playing with archetypes in our bodies, with myths, with stories from different traditions in our physicality, through our breath and through movement. So the way that I like to play with the archetypes of astrology is more as a place where we can learn more about ourselves, not so much from oh, you're this sign and your rising is this, and in that astrological way, but more of, we all have all of the archetypes and we can look at the astrological chart and we can learn about ourselves through that, but we can also just feel into the way that those archetypes are hitting us and notice the way that they touch us. So where is this externally turning, this extroverted quality of summer touching you? And how is it commingling with an energy of the Cancer archetype, which is actually more introverted in a way? And now, of course, people that are Cancer can be extroverted and introverted, and we all are both. We all are all. We all have different aspects of ourselves that are going to show up more this way and take us more that way. We are complex beings. And in a way, the way that Cancer holds the complexity of our being is in that unconditional love that's associated with the mother, because it's an unconditional receptivity. It's a way of the way that Mother Nature holds all of creation and continuously also creates more. And in the process, there is dissolution. There are going to be creatures and species that dissolve and and no longer exist, and new ones can emerge. So there's a death in that process of life-giving quality of Cancer, and there's destruction in the power of water, which is the element of Cancer, that is also life-giving. No life exists without death, and death also gives us the possibility of rebirth, of something new emerging from the decay and the dissolution of something else. So we always have the power of emerging commingled and interconnected with the power of descending and dissolving. So when we have the winter solstice on in the southern hemisphere and the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, both are associated from those different angles with the archetype of Cancer. We can see the way that an archetype is well-rounded, is full as a cyclical being rather than just some attributes that are going to be associated with it. Because in a way, every attribute that we recognize in an archetype can also be explored through its opposite. In a way, you can look at the way that tarot works, right? Like every card has the way that you pull the cards can be upside down or right side up, and really when you look at the archetype, it's well rounded. So we want to look at the shadow and the light of aspects of ourselves, and look at ourselves and at the world through a lens, or if you will, through many lenses that then allow us to understand ourselves and one another, not through putting something in a box so much, not through a binary kind of a thinking, but a more, again, more well-rounded kind of a way. And in some ways, outside the box thinking and behaving and exploring life can be attributed to Cancer, because the crab, the kind of the energy of the crab is walking sideways. So it kind of gives us a playful way of exploring ourselves and the world, not only directly through a straight line kind of a vision, not only by looking back at where we come from, what our ancestry is, what our actions in the how the actions of the past affect where we are today, and looking at where we want to go, but also learning how to walk sideways, learning how to look at things from a side angle, allowing ourselves to explore the world in a more creative kind of a way. And the mother energy is wildly creative. The mother energy as an archetype, and please know that I'm not looking at this or not speaking of this as mother as in mother to children, but rather it's an archetypal presence. So all of us are a mother. All of us are growing something, nurturing something, developing something, and it's a creative process. So there's a fertility to it, even though that one is more associated with the maiden. When the maiden kind of in an archetypal way reaches the the place where she's a fertile goddess. Mother is fertile because she is generative, right? The womb is a generative place, the womb of our own creativity, in our mind heart space, in the temple of our muse, is a generative place. It's receptive because it needs to receive the seed, and it's generative. It grows. It has the capacity to nourish, the ability to grow something from itself, inside itself. So when you go to the southern hemisphere perspective of this archetype, we're in the womb, growing a child, growing a baby. And if you go into the northern hemisphere, the baby is outside, and we are feeding it from our own body. The earth right now is feeding and nourishing us with all the fruit and vegetables that are available during this time of year in the northern hemisphere, feeding us from her body. And Cancer is very bodily oriented. It's all the waters in our body, which is 70% or so, which is the same percentage as the water on Earth, which is amazing, isn't it? The body of the Earth and our own physical body has the same amount of water, of liquidity. And it's associated with the moon. So the moon is said to be the planet ruling, no, it's not a planet, the planet ruling Cancer. So we have phases, we have change, we have tides, we have waves, we have the moon affecting, creating the possibility of life on Earth by ruling the tides. We have the process of becoming and dissolving. And here we are again, taking ourselves back to the southern hemisphere also. It's a process of beginning, growing, peaking, slowly starting to descend, dissolving, dying, decay, rebirth. And all of it is held in the mother, because from conception, death is being created. From the moment of life's sparking itself into its beginning, the process of dying also begins with it, which can be, depends on how you look at it. You can get sad about it. We can look at it and say, wow, this is such a depressive outlook. Or we can look at it and go, wow, what a beautiful remembrance that life and death are intertwined. And the mother, there's the kind of like the triadic way, the triangle that we can look at the world through, which is dissolution, creation, and then sustenance. And that is also mirrored in that new moon, which is where we are today, the beginning of the cycle, reaching the peak in the full moon, and then the waning time, the dissolving time. So there's this triad, and that triad is also seen as seen as the power of the feminine, which is also threefold. And it's feminine not in gender but in code. We all have it. We all have these aspects inside of us, whether we are wherever we are on the spectrum of gender. So there's this idea of the feminine being maiden, mother, and crone, and each of them holds the other. And in the mother, she has risen from the maiden. She has the past of the maiden in her, and now she's also nourishing the maiden as her daughter. You can think of the story of Demeter and Persephone, and I go deep into this in the fall equinox. If you want to know when we have a ceremony coming for the fall equinox, you can subscribe to the mailing list over on mamamandala.com, and you will get all the info when this is announced. Right now we're still playing with the summer solstice somatic ceremony, so if you want in on that and the archetype of the mother, we go pretty deep in there, and it's still available, so you can check it out. I'll leave a link actually in the description of the video for you, so you can check it out. And also subscribe to our mailing list, because you'll get all the information for all of these and so much more, because there's so many inspirational and creative and evocative messages that are going to come your way. So please do. But the power of the mother to kind of bring us back is nurturing and nourishing the maiden as her daughter, and nurturing herself where she is now as the mother, and nourishing and nurturing the way that she will grow to become the crone. And we all have all three: the playfulness and innocence of the child, of the maiden, of the baby and the adolescent, and we all have the nurturing, feeding, and generous and giving qualities of the mother. And we all have in us, no matter what age we are, the wisdom and the ability to weave together and integrate the lessons of the crone. And so the mother is that midline. It's the space between. It's the space between the crone and the maiden, and the doorway through which those two can interact. And the other beautiful part of it is that if you think of the relationship between a grandma and her granddaughter, and again, it can be a grandpa and a grandson too. It's not a gender thing. But it goes, if it's healthy, the parent isn't always necessarily anymore. Once the child is brought in, the parent doesn't need to be the doorway, the threshold between the two. The grandparent and the grandchild have their own relationship, right? So there's this complexity, because it gives all of the relationships will give us and unfold in three ways to give us more complexity. So the triads give birth to more triads. The mother is like that center of the triad as an archetype, because it's the life-giving, nourishing energy. Now, this is kind of cool, because in ancient Egypt, the symbol for this archetype, for the astrological sign was the dung beetle. And the way that the ancient Egyptians looked at astrological signs was actually in the evening rising. So we look at the astrology from the solar perspective, where the constellation is in relationship to the sun. They looked at it more as the evening rising. So this was the time of during this time of year, the Cancer, as it was actually in the sun in Cancer. Ooh, sorry, let me center myself. Sometimes I get carried away in many different directions at once. So in the winter, when the constellation of Cancer rises, this would be the time when the winter solstice hits, and then the dung beetle carries the dung ball up the hill. The way that basically this archetype carries the sun back up from the depth. So that would be the winter and the Cancer constellation. In the summer, this was their new year for the ancient Egyptians. So the sign of Cancer, which was the dung beetle, was the entryway of the soul into the body. The way that the spirit is becoming embodied. And you don't need to take this too far into a faith-based conversation. You can play with it as a thing, however you want to play with it. It can also just be a metaphor, and we can ask ourselves, what does that evoke in us? What does that do for you when you consider, this time, this lunar cycle that begins today with the energy of the mother is a doorway. It's a threshold through which the spirit of whatever it wants to go into your life, whatever you are calling in, is entering a process of becoming form and shape. And this can be powerful with a nourishing energy all around us in summer because we can feed it. So, how are you going to feed the creative process, the very thing that you are calling in? And if you do a little ceremony for yourself today with the new moon, if you are, and even if that ceremony is just a meditation, as you call in the energy that you would like to bring into shape, form, and embodiment, as you call it in, what is it going to be for you? How is that going to be influencing, affecting, interacting, and what is it going to become in your life personally, for you, in yourself, in your own process of working on yourself and taking yourself wherever it is that you are wanting to go? And what is it going to be for more than yourself? How is that very thing that you are inspired to make into reality right now in your life? What are you going to, not only how are you going to feed it and grow it, but how will it feed and nourish more than you? And that's a great thing to ask ourselves in the beginning of this lunar cycle, because this lunar cycle is also going to take us, we're going to spend about half the time of this lunar cycle, I think about half, in the sign of Cancer that began in the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. And then we're going to spend half of the lunar cycle that starts in Cancer will be spent this year in Leo, in the very self-oriented, very much of the wildness of the expression of our solar energy. This is so cool because the sun and the moon right now are in Cancer. And this process of Cancer, both as a dung beetle, but also the way that we interact with it as a lunar energy, as the moon is the planet that's said to be ruling this sign. This is and being in the northern hemisphere at a time when the sun is so strong. This archetype, this sign invites us to play inside ourselves and in society and in our lives with the energy of solar and the energy of lunar, with moon and with sun. Because right now in the northern hemisphere, the dung ball that is the sun has passed through its peak and is now rolling downhill. So from the peak of solar energy, we're starting to move slowly. It's still summer, it's still very sun oriented, but we're starting to move toward moon, toward the nighttime. It's the waning time of the year, right? So there's a play between lunar and solar in this sign, where however you look at it, because if you go to the southern hemisphere and the dung ball is going uphill with the dung beetle, it's from lunar towards solar. So wherever we are, and if you look at the glyph of Cancer, it's kind of like a sideways 69. So it's two waves. It's the tides mirroring each other, going toward each other. So there's an energy of merging, which is very much related to that wateriness of this sign, to the liquidity of the water sign of Cancer. And it's this invitation in this archetype to make a home for ourselves, to make a sacred, safe haven inside ourselves for all of our parts, for the lunar and the solar and everything that's in between, to take it sideways, to tilt it sideways, right? The glyph is sideways, to tilt it sideways, to walk sideways, and to consider the way that a home and the safety of a home can become a process of outside the box movement. So we're not stuck in a home just in one way of thinking. How can you build a space for yourself and more than yourself, a space for yourself and others who you love in your life, a space for your tribe that maybe isn't then excluding others? Yes, there's discernment. Yes, you're not going to bring everybody home. That's totally that's what a home is for. It's a boundary where you have room for yourself and your loved ones, and that is 100% needed. And in this process of building that kind of energy, how do we not then create more separation that is harmful? How do we make our tribe, let's say our family, the Cancer archetype is family oriented, how do we make our family, our people who we love, feel at home in our space and not let that then become, oh, but these guys don't deserve? How do we make sure that they don't have to come into your home, but how do we make sure that others have a home too? That by taking care of ourselves and protecting ourselves, we're not turning it into something that then harms others. And I think this is something humans can get better at. We see it playing hardcore in the world stage right now, where some people think these people are more important and other people are saying that those people are more important. Oh, some people are demonizing that tribe and other people are demonizing the tribe that they are fighting. How do we create safety and boundaries that protect those people and make room and boundaries and build and nurture those people too? How do we make sure that everyone is taken care of? Maybe not in the same home, maybe not as one state, maybe as maybe there is a boundary and a difference without creating the kind of separation that is harming one people on the expense of that is protecting one people on the expense of others, that is harming those people to protect those people. How do we do that? This is something maybe for us to consider, to contemplate, to watch our own participation in what goes on the world stage, and consider how we become protective motherly energies, home-making gods, goddesses, presences in the world that are nurturing and caretaking, that are doing so in ways that make sure that it's a generous archetype. There is enough for everybody. How do we distribute it? How do we support the distribution of that? How do we speak against something by speaking for something? How do we fight for justice without killing people, just or destroying them verbally, because they are in our minds are the ones causing the harm, and we're blinded to the way that life, that the story is more intricate. The mother archetype in her nurturing is holding the complexity of the world and will not forsake any of the children. All children deserve safety. All children deserve to live. So may this new moon inspire a lunar cycle that helps us work on ourselves and on the world in ways that are not harming one another. Not these guys and not those guys. But finding ways to create a temple of a home. A space that is caring and devoted to all life. I don't know how, but it begins with asking ourselves. So have a beautiful new moon. Have a beautiful lunar cycle. This was long, so I appreciate you stayed with me through the whole thing, and I hope to see you soon. Do subscribe to this channel if this speaks to you in any way, shape, or form. Share it with your people, will you? Help a sister grow her work if you like it, if it speaks to you. And subscribe to our mailing list over on mandala.com, because that's where a lot of the juice kind of flows, and a lot of the nourishment is as well. And I will see you soon. Thank you. Mwah. Namaste.